can't say I had to do anything that weird, although I worked in an office where I was one of the only men in the office. It was primarily a team of women that I worked on. And so I would occasionally get things like, Evan, can you come in here and eat the rest of this bacon? I don't want to eat it. Or, Evan, can you come in here and open this jar or open this bottle that I can't get open? And it was the best was the person who asked me was so apologetic. She's like, I'm really sorry that I'm asking you to do this. And I just said, like, it's really not a big deal. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I just think it's funny conforming to, like very specific gender stereotypes because I feel like I'm not one of those people who falls into a lot of the stereotypical male behavior.
I like that story though.
That is a good one.
I would love getting that call. Be like, excuse me, Dave.
Do you want to finish the bacon?
Come in here, yeah, and hoover up these nachos before the rest of us eat them.
Why weren't people eating all the bacon? Yeah. I'm very confused by this.
Bacon doesn't have that much of the calorie intake, man. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of fat on the bacon.
Yeah, is that what we're talking about, or were they full? Like, I have questions because I have a ginormous appetite, so I'm curious.
I think it was usually that they were full, but they just assumed like, okay, Evan, you probably have some leftover room somewhere in your stomach to store the rest of this.
You have a bottomless pit.
You're like the Marine Corps of bacon. The Marines leave no man behind. Evan leaves no bacon behind. Is that it?
This is true. No bacon left behind.
Everybody, welcome to Spoiler Peace Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
So welcome everybody to August. And hey, what in August it is.
Oh, yeah, it is August. I was like, what? It's still July.
Yeah.
It is not.
So we got 4 movies on the docket this week that most of us saw. We have, we'll just give you the list real quick. We have Made in Italy, starring Liam Neeson. La Llorona, which does not star Liam Neeson. I Used to Go Here, which stars Gillian Jacobs and not anybody related to Liam Neeson. And then finally, She Dies Tomorrow, which I'll just stop making this joke. So
Liam Neeson cameo.
Yeah. Before we get into the show, though, we have an email we wanted to share with you this week. We got an email from Matt from Hyannis, a longtime listener, and he wrote us the subject is Old Guard / She-Ra. And it says, "Hi, spoiler folks. Hope everyone's staying safe and healthy during this psychotic time." Good way to put it. Psychotic time. I recently finished your episode reviewing The Old Guard and had a follow-up from Megan. So Megan, are you ready?
Woo-hoo. I'm ready.
Okay. One of the things you love most about that movie is that it was a true queer superhero movie, which is a community that otherwise barely exists in that genre.
Mm-hmm.
You're someone who's always tried to promote stories with queer themes or characters or those told by queer creators. Have you had a chance to check out Noelle Stevenson's She-Ra reboot on Netflix, which is very much a queer superhero story ?
So yes, it is absolutely a queer superhero story. And I have started it. I am only in season 1. I feel like a terrible, terrible person that I have not gotten further into it. I've got sidelined by a lot of other film watching, you name it. But yes, it is actually the very next thing I'm about to start watching, resume watching, because I love it so much. She-Ra is amazing. I actually, not to brag, but I will slightly, I did a panel on She-Ra the first season because I was such a huge fan of it. I love the original. The reboot is even better. I love how feminist it is, how queer it is, how body divergent it is. We see lots of different body shapes and sizes, how racially diverse it is. It is fantastic. It is such a great show and I love it. And I know, Evan, you watch it too. And it is just, it makes my queer heart sing. I love it. And I wish everything had this kind of queer representation. And I mean, it's such just kind of a part of the fabric of the stories in the show. And it's not like it's a big deal that they're queer. They just are. And it's wonderful. And I love it.
That's what's amazing about it. I mean, you find out, there's just a reveal at one point, and I remember thinking, wow, this is just amazing that this is just treated, just characters come up and they're queer and then no one says anything. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, but yeah, it's all of those things that you're saying, like it's celebrates all different skin tones and body types, but it also just has this amazing way of balancing both like really serious things and also just injecting so much levity into the story. It's really is incredible, and I have had the good fortune of seeing all of it, and I have to say it's an incredible show.
Yeah, it is, because it's so, I don't want to say it's rare, but it is sometimes for something to deal so deftly with serious issues and tackle them really well and feel complex and complete, but also to have so much joy, just in exuberance, just coming out of it. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It's such a lovely show.
Huh. Well, okay, Matt, there's your answer.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, it's a great question. And, and what if I hadn't watched it? What if we none of us had started it? And so I'm so glad you asked that. So thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Thanks for writing in. And it's cool to talk about something else that isn't one of the movies that we're talking about this week. Well, let's move on then. Oh boy. Let's move on to Made in Italy. Evan.
Okay.
Or sorry, Megan, you saw that.
I saw that. Yes.
You saw that, Megan.
I did not. But I mean, I'll join you in the conversation.
Evan, if you were going to choose one movie to not watch this week, it would have been Society. If you were going to choose a second movie to not watch this week, it would have been Made in Italy.
That good, huh?
Well, it's not that it's bad. It's just so mediocre.
It's so like blah.
Yeah.
Mediocre is probably the perfect word for it. Yeah.
And the thing that's really disappointing about it is this is obviously, or they're trying to tell a personal story. The log line is this. You've got an estranged father and son, Liam Neeson, and then his son played by his real life son, Michael Richardson, Natasha Richardson's kid. And mom has died many years ago, and dad sent him off to boarding school, and the kid's getting divorced and needs to buy his wife's art gallery so he can run it. So he wants to sell their house in Italy that his mom willed to the two of them. That's the story. And what it kind of feels like is there's already a bad movie made about, regrettable choices about your life and your home. And it stars Russell Crowe. And what is it called? It's directed by Ridley Scott. It's a Peter Mayle book. A year.
Oh, The Good Something.
Year.
Yeah, The Good Year.
That's a bad movie. It wants to be a good movie. And it's super huge budget. And this is the same movie, but somehow worse. Like if that's a 2.5 star movie, A Good Year, which has, except for the father-son, estrangement, the exact same plot. And what's really disappointing about Made in Italy, Megan, you tell me what you think, but I was really hoping that the child of two acting titans would be a better actor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he's really outclassed by his dad in this movie. And Liam Neeson isn't even given his best performance. I should mention.
No, he's not. But the thing I will say, so yeah, I definitely agree with you that Michael Richardson is not great here. I mean, he's fine. I almost wish he was bad, because then that would be more interesting.
Yeah.
It's just so fine. Like everything is just so, it's fine. It's mediocre. It's just, it's so forgettable.
It's a crummy character,
It's a crummy character. There is no character development. We don't really know anything about him other than he wants to buy his art gallery from his soon-to-be ex-wife, and she dumped him. That's like all, and he's estranged from his father. That's like all we know. We know nothing about him as a person, as far as character traits or anything like that. What I will say, though, that I found utterly delightful about this film.
I know where you're going with this, but say it anyway.
I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. You probably do. And I'm actually really glad that I get to talk about this on the show, because this is an opinion I've held for a very long time, but haven't really had the opportunity to discuss it. I think people are absolutely sleeping on the fact that Liam Neeson is fucking hilarious. Liam Neeson can be so funny. He has such a deadpan sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And I've seen him be hilarious in sketches here and there. And I want to see him really indulge that in a film. And I was hoping this was going to be that film because in the beginning it's very funny. And like, I mean, I have to say the one really interesting thing about this film is we get a hentai conversation.
What?
Yeah,
A hentai conversation.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
is it?
I
Is
remember
it?
they're like-
Is it art? Discuss.
Yeah, they're talking about that. I'm like, is this what in this movie? All right.
Right? I'm like, oh, this is going to be a different movie. It's lulled you into a false sense of security that it's like this fluffy light film, and no, it's going to go much more strange and darker. And no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hente.
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, but no, but I do think Liam Neeson is very funny in this. I just don't think he's given enough material, good enough material to really do much with it.
Yeah, I agree. And I can't remember the actor's name who plays her, but the woman who owns and runs the restaurant. She's playing the Marion Cotillard part from A Good Year. Her name. I've seen she's Italian. You've seen her in things.
Valeria Bilello.
That's her. And I kind of liked her. You know, she's
she's fine.
You know, she was better than the part deserved. And Lindsay Duncan, better than the part deserved.
I mean, Lindsay Duncan is always great.
She's great.
She is always great. So yeah, so it was nice to see her.
It was. I think what I found so disappointing about this is, you know, Liam Neeson has said rather recently that, you know, the sudden death of his wife, Natasha Richardson, great actor herself, is still really traumatic for him. All these, like, what, 10 years later, 12 years later, it's been a long time. And there's a kind of, they get to that in a moment between Liam Neeson and Lindsay Duncan in the movie where she talks about how her husband left her for another man. And she's like, so I thought I'd move to Italy to start over. And he's like, yeah, but you can't start over. And she's like, no, you can't. And I was just like, that's all we're getting? I mean, I guess, all right. If you want to do one subtle thing in this movie, it's that. But, you know. But
considering that the whole movie is about grief and moving past grief, it really should deal with grief more. And that's actually my big problem with this film is that it's not a rom-com, but we do get a meet cute, of course. And it suffers from the biggest problem that sitcoms and rom-coms, and you guys know I love rom-coms, but the biggest problem that those genres suffer from is people just have a fucking honest conversation. Just talk. Yeah. Just have a conversation. And if people obviously not everybody can do that. People are stymied or, you know, repressing things or, you know, just can't handle those kinds of things. But then explore that, show that. But that's not really even, it's handled in such a kind of one note kind of way that it's really frustrating. The other thing that really, this is probably the one thing that actually really infuriated me about the film.
Infuriated.
Oh, yeah. It infuriated me because it buys into a trope that I absolutely fucking despise. So Liam Neeson has been pretty much kind of an absent father for most of this guy's life after his wife dies because he's so grief-stricken. He doesn't want to cause his son pain, supposedly. And okay, all right, we'll go with that. But then at the end of the film, he asks his father, he's like, hey, you never came to my gallery events, you know, what the hell, why not? And he's like, oh, well, Ruth, his daughter-in-law, his son's soon-to-be ex-wife, he's like, Ruth told me that it would be better if I never came, that it would be too much pressure for you. And then that's it. There's nothing more. And I'm like, really? We're going to vilify Ruth and we're going to demonize her and put the blame on fucking her rather than you're a shitty dad who couldn't support his fucking son and you couldn't be there for your son because you were too self-involved? Like, really? Oh, It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Well, I don't think there's much gray area in that. So I would say you can skip Made in Italy. I mean, this is such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. There's better things to see Liam Neeson in. Go watch those.
Yeah, and they do have one after they have their big cathartic moment. The next day, the son is kind of pissed off at him again, and Liam Neeson's like, "I thought we fucking fixed things up," and he's like, "Dude, it was one conversation. Fuck you."
So I actually did appreciate that scene.
I did too.
That's a really good scene, and I actually really like the ending, like the final shot with both of them kind of looking at the painted wall. I really liked that too. Yeah, I think that's the problem, though, is that you hit the nail on the head, Dave. There's just too many missed opportunities here.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can discuss La Llorona. And are there missed opportunities in this? Or Megan and Evan, is it awesome? I mean, I don't know. I just like to say La Llorona because it sounds like
Yeah.
My Sharona.
Yeah, and I just keep hearing it in my head. La Llorona. Do 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 do. Yes.
Massive
no.
guitar solo that changes the feel of the song halfway through. Yeah. Okay.
So to answer your question, I don't know. I feel like this was a good movie for me, but not a great movie. And I think for me, a lot of it maybe has to do with not necessarily the subject or the content, but maybe just feeling kind of just slow and kind of blah at points, like in its presentation.
Oh, I disagree.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I hear a fight coming on. I don't really.
Fight.
Can I just tell you guys both real quickly why I did not watch this? And the reasons are terrible.
Oh, Dave.
So we watched, whatever, my weekend, whatever. So I watch She Dies Tomorrow, which we will discuss later in the show. And She Dies Tomorrow is like, it's a movie. I'm not going to give anything away now, even though it is spoiler piece. I'm like, oh, it's on like 10:30. I'll watch La Llorona. And I threw it in, and between the ghosts and the genocide and the old man running around the house with a gun, I was just like, I'm not doing this tonight. I'm just not doing it. So that's how that went down.
Yeah, we should probably give a summary before we dive into.
Yes,
that was a lot of info we've just thrown out there.
I made it intriguing though, right? I mean,
you
come
did.
on.
Good job, Dave.
Do you want to do the summary?
Sure. La Llorona is actually not the film, but the actual concept is translates to weeping woman. It is a folklore tale. It is a tale kind of to warn children to behave and to not go out at night. And basically, she is a woman who drowned her children and goes around wailing. And if you see her or hear her, you will be met with misfortune. And this is...
Oh my God. I looked up what that meant. La Llorona is like, weeping woman. And then I was like, man, am I glad I didn't watch this now.
Well, but so this movie takes that myth and makes it a little different. Actually, I love it. Yeah, it is different. So that's the myth, that's the context, that's the background. But the film is about a family who are living with this man who was a dictator. It's a Guatemalan film. It takes place in Guatemala. Mm-hmm. And he was a dictator during the Civil War, which happened from the 60s to the mid 90s. And he's on trial for war crimes. And people are like testifying, saying, like he was terrible. He ordered rape and he ordered murder and genocide and you name it. And they're basically quarantined in their house because they have protesters out every single day, and all the wait staff, like all the help, have left because they're scared. And then a new maid who is an indigenous woman comes and things get creepy. And that's basically the summary.
Yeah, I would say that's a really good summary.
Thanks. It's a lot to kind of pack in because there's just so much contextually happening and so much in the film happening, even though there's not a lot that happens. It's kind of an interesting and intriguing balance. And I really loved this. I thought this was great. I love a socio-political film. I love that it's taking, folklore and making a horror film out of it, but also, incorporating political history and, social justice, and how La Llorona is being utilized as kind of an avenging angel, if you will. Like, she's a harbinger of retribution and vengeance. And I just think that's fantastic. Yeah. And I loved that.
Yeah. I liked those aspects of the film. I like that this is about a dictator who he's suffering from Alzheimer's and his health is failing, but he's still on trial. I thought the courtroom scenes were really captivating, the way they were shot and focused on the people who were the witnesses, and kind of having this massive crowd, but kind of, keeping them in the dark and kind of out of focus while the testimony was happening. I thought that was really cool. I love that this film, although it's about this dictator and his crimes, it really focuses on the women in the film. And it's a lot more their story than his story. It's about his wife. It's about his daughter. It's about the servants who work for him, and how
his granddaughter.
His granddaughter, and how they've all kind of, not the granddaughter, but everyone else has kind of done things to enable him and to enable this behavior. And many of them are still reinforcing this even with the even after he's found guilty and he kind of gets, I forget what they exactly say, but basically something along the lines of like, oh, he made those charges go away. And
Yeah.
it's just this really great contrast of like the mother who is still defending her husband and the daughter who is losing faith and is just starting to question everything. And it's this really fascinating push and pull. And I love the aspect of the mother, the wife character is having these nightmares and these visions of being one of the people that was terrorized. And that comes to, I think, a really fascinating conclusion.
Yeah, I agree
in the
with
film where she's having these nightmares and she's living the life of this vengeful spirit whose children were drowned by this dictator, and she was shot and killed by the dictator. And so these dreams kind of come to this crazy fever state where the wife actually strangles her husband to death. And I thought that was really cool how that was done.
I agree. And I think what's even more fascinating about that, or kind of like, kind of piggybacking off of that, is that in the beginning of the film, or towards, not the beginning, but towards the beginning, the daughter says to her mother, when she's questioning these horrific acts and everything, and the wife of the dictator is saying, she basically calls the women who testified at the trial, she calls them prostitutes. And, and she's saying like, oh, well, they would come with their nursing children and the generals would hire them. And then the low class generals would, have them as sex workers. And so I don't believe anything they say. And which is so disgusting and dismissive. And the daughter's like, nobody could make up what they said. Like, and she completely believes them, as she should. And I think that's what makes it an even more fascinating element, that the wife is the one who's like being, like, she's internalized so much misogyny and racism too against the indigenous women. And yet here she is now, not only living the life of an indigenous woman, who's been, terrorized and brutalized, but she's also now being the one to enact vengeance. It's fascinating. And I also love the opening scene when all the women are staring at the camera and they're praying in kind of this prayer circle. And I think that just visually underscores your point, Evan, that it is so much about the women. It's not, yes, of course it's about the dictator, but it's really more about how his actions have really caused this web of destruction and chaos and pain and terror, and how it impacts all these women. And I love that it centers the women.
Another scene that I thought was really cool was when they were looking out at the protesters outside the house, and you start to realize that all the protesters are people that he murdered, and they matched flyers with the people's photos that are, kind of blowing around in the wind over their compound. And I thought that was a really cool touch.
I agree. I loved that. I really loved the editing and the cinematography in this, because it's so eerie and silent so often. And like, you really have to watch the entire scene, like, because there might be something going on, off to the side or, at the top of the frame. And like, I loved the way it was done. Thought it was really, really well done.
Well, now I kind of want to see it. God damn. You guys said drowned children. I was like, I'm out. But I guess it's not really.
That's really only just a very small portion toward the end of the movie when you see that happening. Water is definitely an element that runs throughout the film.
Yes.
In terms of, terror, or the horror aspect of it is water. It just keeps coming up in ways. And there's this kind of rising tide in the house, even the way that water is suddenly everywhere. I don't know. I think it's cool. I really like what this movie was going for, and I liked the story. I liked what it was. I just felt like for me, it needed a little bit more oomph. It needed to be a little snappier, a little more something there to kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. And I'm just going to respectfully disagree. I think that it is kind of a slower unfolding pace, but that resonated with me. And I really found that to be incredibly effective, especially considering that this is such a buildup of, decades and decades of genocide and horror, that it's just this kind of slow unraveling, this kind of almost like this torture, like the dictator is being tortured because he keeps thinking he's being, terrorized by, the new maid, who, by the way, the woman who plays her, Maria Mercedes Coroy, she's fantastic. She is so great. And she doesn't say a lot. Like, her performance is so fantastic and wordless. There's so much of it. Like, it's so much in her face and her body language. And I really thought she was great. I mean, everybody I think is doing a great job in this, but she especially I thought stood out. And it's just fantastic.
Huh. Okay. All right. Well, you spoiler free me into wanting to see
Yay!
it. So thanks, guys. Great. Awesome. So happy. Shall we move on to not my Sharona, but I used to go here.
Yes.
So anyway, I used to go here. I'll try to summarize this really quickly. Gillian Jacobs is a first-time novelist who has written a book that she was hoping was going to do well, but is taking a dump. And
correct.
While this is happening, her old favorite literature professor from college, Jermaine Clement, invites her to come do a reading at her old school, and she goes, and wacky things happen. So,
those wacky things.
She spends a weekend in her old college town, and she kind of falls in with a group of students who are
living in her old house,
in her old apartment. Yeah, she kind of has a weekend being involved with them and hanging out and just spending time in her old haunts.
I liked it because I like movies like this, and I like Gillian Jacobs. I almost said Anderson. I don't know why I keep almost saying that. But also because she's a soft G, isn't she, Gillian Anderson?
She is a soft G.
I like movies like this. I'm predisposed to like movies like this, but I feel like I used to go here would have been better 2 years ago. Now it seems a little lightweight. It's like, oh no, your first novel didn't do well. Why 160,000 Americans have died during a pandemic. That's kind of how I feel. I cannot divorce myself so far from a lot of personal context with the movies we're watching. So I apologize for that, listeners. That being said, I had a good time. I found it predictable as fuck.
Very predictable.
Like, the idea that Jermaine Clement is having an affair with one of his students, like you even know which one he's doing
Oh
it
my
with.
God.
I mean,
you know it like in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Yeah.
When she gets up and reads that poem in class, it's like they're fucking, it's just like.
Especially, yes.
Yeah.
It's so clear.
Yeah.
And even Gillian Jacobs, like the look on her face is like, you can tell she's like, oh my God, they're fucking,
Yeah, you literally watch her realize and become uncomfortable sitting in the chair as he keeps kind of looking back at her to the chair where she's sitting.
Yeah, she plays that scene really well. But what did you guys think about this, other than the fact that it's really predictable? I thought it had some funny moments, but, what do you think?
I did not have as hard of a time kind of divorcing what's going on. I really just went in and enjoyed it and thought it was just kind of a pleasant, light experience of a movie. I liked the performances. I enjoyed the people in it and the rapport. And yeah, it was funny, but not like crazy funny, just medium funny. For me, overall, I would say I liked it. It was pleasant.
Pleasant. It is pleasant. That's true. Megan, what did you think?
Yeah, I liked it too. It's funny. I didn't think of this. It's interesting. I'm kind of in the middle of both of you. I didn't find this to be super light and pleasant, but I also, because I think it's dealing with some deeper themes, but I also wasn't annoyed thinking, and Dave, I totally get what you're saying, because while I also cannot divorce myself from, COVID and everything happening, I also think, like, every film we watch, I'm like, oh, is this a metaphor for a pandemic?
Yeah.
So it's more kind of that rather than, oh, this is too light for what we're dealing with right now. Because I think especially the fact that we're writers, I think we all, the three of us, when I say we all, I think we can relate to, you think that something's going to be amazing, something's taken off, and then, oh, fuck, you're fucked.
Oh,
it's not taking off. And so I'm not usually the biggest fan of an Arrested Development narrative, but this is actually taking it in a really different way, which I kind of appreciated Chris Ray's take on that, the writer-director. I really appreciated that because it's not so much that Gillian Jacobs' character doesn't want to grow up. It's, she has a house, she was going to get married, but she didn't feel like, she wanted to get married, go through with it. But it's not because she's not ready or doesn't want responsibilities. That's not why she's returning to her college town and hanging out with a bunch of college kids, although, somebody could certainly argue that. But it's just more that she really wants to recapture her youth when her life and all these possibilities were endless and her whole life was kind of laid out in front of her. And that's something really compelling. And that's a really interesting angle to kind of explore, like, what was it like when you thought your whole life was ahead of you? What was it like when you had all these endless opportunities? Because I would argue, as a 37-year-old woman, she's still pretty fucking young and still has many opportunities, ahead of her. Yeah. But it's interesting thinking she doesn't, because, her friends are all married. They're like, her 3 best friends are all pregnant at the same time, and she's at a baby shower. And I found it kind of interesting and so awkward. And there's so many awkward scenes, but especially when they're all just showing off their baby bumps and she's showing her book.
Yeah.
It's like, that's her baby, which it is, but it's an interesting scene.
Yeah.
I liked that. Well, I was going to say, I liked some of the awkward, cringy scenes. I think they led to some really cool moments. Yeah. Like when she's trying to plug her phone in to see the text from her fiance and she's in the room and the kids come in the room and they're about to have sex and then she pops out and then it cuts to them comforting her and reading the text with her.
Yeah.
I thought
I love that.
There were just a lot of sweet moments like that I very much enjoyed. Like their roommate, I think his name is Brandon, and he's just a total
Brandon.
Tall Brandon.
He's a total weirdo. And the guy whose girlfriend is sleeping with Jermaine Clement, they realize that Jermaine Clement's house is behind his mom's house. So they all sneak over and jump over the fence. But then Brandon is stuck there and the kid's mom comes out. And so he ends up hanging out with kid's mom and having this really great time while the rest of them are having this
like the worst
sneaky adventure into Jermaine Clement's house to catch them, together. And what I found even funny about that is they walk in on them, catch them, and then the next scene is they're all sitting down having tea and talking about
it. Yeah. You know what? Hearing you guys talk about this again, I like it a lot more than I thought I did. But you know what I actually really liked a lot? And this is going to sound, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I really liked the way it was written and the way Gillian Jacobs played her relationship with her ex-fiance, who you never see on screen, by the way, except in like still photos and stuff.
Yeah.
And when she finally tells the story, she's calling him and being like, hey, we should catch up. And, I can't remember all the things she says, but she tries to contact him 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the movie. And they keep missing each other. And she finds out that he's got a new girlfriend on his Instagram page. And when she finally tells the story about what happened, she just says, he asked me to marry him. And I said yes, even though I didn't want to. And then we booked, all the stuff, even though I didn't want to. And she doesn't explain why she didn't want to, or that, it's not because she didn't love him or whatever. She just didn't want to get married for some reason. And so he broke it off. And she's got like even though she didn't want any of those things, she still has a really complicated relationship with it. It's like, I just found that I know so many people who've been like, I never should have gotten married. Or they're like, 3 months from now, they're like, who cares if you lose the catering deposit? You don't want to get married. Just fucking cancel everything. So I just found, you get old enough, like I am, and you've just heard that story told a million different ways. And I found it really effective. I don't know how you guys felt.
Yeah, I liked that there's no big, long, in-depth reveal or, anything like that. And I also appreciated that it's not like, because oftentimes if somebody doesn't want to get married or they don't want a house or they don't want a baby or whatever in films, it's often code for they're broken or they just want to be, they don't want any responsibilities. And I think that just speaks to the testament of the writing that it's a better film than that it's just like, no, she didn't want this and that's okay. Like, you don't have to fucking want to get married. Like, it's totally fine to not want to be married and to focus on your career or to be in a relationship but not married. Like, yeah, so I really appreciated that. I also, speaking about the kind of zany capers that she has with the college kids, I think what works so well and sidebar, I love the diversity of the cast. I think it's great to see. But I also just loved the college kids so much. They were like, I kept expecting them to be really obnoxious and really annoying or really cruel to her or be shitty in some way. And they weren't. They were the loveliest to her and just to each other. And I really, really liked that. And I especially really liked Forrest Goodluck, who plays Animal. He's always great in everything he's in. And why are you laughing?
Because his name's Animal.
I know.
It just really cracked me up when I'm like, oh my God, that's his name. You know?
Yeah, that was his name in the movie. I know. And that, and Chloe Janelle, who plays Emma, his partner, girlfriend, person he likes to hang out with, who knows? She was great too. And I just really thought that the college kids made Gillian Jacobs was already really great in this. And I just think that they kind of elevated the film too and made it more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Agreed. They were just really awesome, good people, and they all were great in their roles.
I'm going to sound like such an old person when I say this, but generally speaking, no. You know how like people our parents' age, and I'm, however old they are, they have a lot of problems with people in our generation. I find the younger kids, for lack of a better term, I find most of them to be quite delightful. With all of their like open-mindedness and, who gives a shit, like who you're sleeping, like I love it. Can't get enough of these kids going like, dude, it's cool, man, whatever. I love it's awesome. So the fact that they're about to have sex while she's trying to plug in her phone and then they end up comforting her and making her a place to sleep on the sofa. That was great. You're right.
I agree. So. And I like how they all kind of band together, realizing that Jermaine Clement is such an ass. Like, I just really kind of loved that too.
But even when they're like, calling him out on it, they're not being dicks. They're just like, dude, you shouldn't do this. This is fucked up.
Yeah. And I also, off of that too, I loved the conversation that he and Gillian Jacobs has where she's talking about the power differential between him and April and, a student. And I love that. I love that so much because yes, April is absolutely of consenting age. She is an adult, but it's still fucking creepy as hell that he is her professor. He's so much older than her. He's in an authority figure in a position of power in multiple ways. So I love that she called him out on that.
And you find out that Gillian Jacobs tried to start an affair with him when she was a student and he said no because at that time he was really early in his career and he's like, I can't do that. That's crazy. And now, 15 years later, look where we are.
He's like, whatever.
Yeah. And I also liked how Gillian Jacobs was like, oh yeah, you and your wife have an understanding. Like, why did you wait until she's out of town to, in Kentucky to like fuck your student? He's like, because she's in Kentucky fucking her ex-husband. And then Jacobs just goes, oh, that does make things more complicated. And I just like, yeah. And that's where that ends right there. I was just like,
well, and then he says, yes. Well, yes, it is.
So, okay. I like this better than I remembered I did. Thank you guys for shining that light on a movie that I saw less than a week ago and couldn't remember all that much. So,
hey, it happens.
Well, if anybody doesn't have anything else to say about I Used to Go Here, title.
I had one more thing that I thought was really funny. The thing with the bed and breakfast, the woman who owned the bed and breakfast, how she was just so unpleasant. And then, she shows up for breakfast the last day there and the woman makes her this lovely breakfast. She's so excited about serving breakfast.
Yeah, that was funny. Okay, so finally, I know, Megan, you've been wanting to talk about this one, I think. She dies tomorrow.
I have.
Well, I'm going to take the wind out of your sails. This movie's bullshit. No, I'm just kidding. I really liked it.
I knew you would because you always do that. You always pull a psych.
Yeah. And you know what? This kind of movie is made for me. Now it's not as long as it should be because Evan, we all know that I love long movies where nothing happens. But this is kind of perfect because this movie, everything happens and nothing happens at the same time.
Yeah. That's very apropos.
and it's like weird, but not because it's weird because it needs to be weird.
Yeah. Oh, it's weird.
Yeah. Not because it's just like, let's be weird. It's just like, no, this is a fucking weird thing that's happening. And so we need to acknowledge that it is strange. I
think that's the beauty of it.
I really like that. Yes. Oh, absolutely. I am not a big fan of Amy Seimetz, the performer, but as the writer-director, I think I'm on board. So, but you guys, please talk. I've talked enough.
I like Amy Seimetz as a performer, and I now love her even more as a writer-director. And sidebar, speaking about her performance, I love that she funded this film with her Pet Sematary money.
I thought that was actually cool too.
Yeah, that's great. So I love this. I think this is so incredibly haunting and visceral, macabre, unnerving. I think that, and I know we're going to get to the summary in a moment, but I have to say, I think it captures the conflicting emotions, the fear, honesty, ambivalence, apathy, all of those various emotions and reactions of facing impending death. And I love that. And I love that about this film. Yeah. This film is just, it's beautiful to look at. The cinematography is amazing. The colors, I loved it. It was great. So who wants to do the summary?
Well, quick question. Well, okay. This woman thinks she's going to die tomorrow.
Yes.
And then she tells one of her friends, and then her friend starts to think she's going to die tomorrow. And then she tells people, it's kind of like that scene in Wayne's World where they tell two friends and they tell two friends.
Oh my God.
And they tell two friends.
It spreads like a virus.
Everybody in the movie starts to think they're going to die tomorrow. So basically shit just gets real for everybody.
Yep.
And I really liked the couple, the guy from TV on the Radio. What's his name? Who's
I don't know what TV on the Radio is. Sorry.
That's a band.
Oh, sorry.
He was also in Rachel Getting Married. Anyway,
nope.
It's the couple. They unplug his dad's life support system.
Oh, yes.
And then his now ex-girlfriend is like, I was going to break up with you when your dad got sick, and so I had to wait because I didn't want to be the asshole who breaks up with someone when his dad just had a stroke.
Yeah, that's Tunde Adebimpe.
Yeah. And I was just like, man, I know people that happened to a friend of mine. His mother died, poor guy. And then his girlfriend stayed with him for an extra 3 months because she was about to break up with him. I'm just like, I can't believe this.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, you know?
Totally.
It does.
So,
but that's the thing I love about this film so much is I love that we get those various, reactions. Like the two of them are like, well, we should have broken up. And then, she says that I was going to break up with you, but I didn't because your father. And he's like, well, we wouldn't have lasted anyway. But then you also get Jane, Amy, the protagonist's friend. And Jane is like, I have to figure out what's going on. And she keeps trying to call Amy and be like, what's happening? I know you know what's going on. She goes to the doctor, trying to figure it out. And it's like she's trying to solve a puzzle that she just can't solve. And then, Jason and his wife, Susan, are, comforting their daughter and then tell her. And it's like, and Amy is going back to her, her date's house where her new boyfriend, whomever he was, and where they spent a vacation, and she's reminiscing, but she's also doing dangerous dune buggy, shit. And, she's, and a recovering alcoholic, but then she, relapses because she's like, what the fuck does it matter? All of these various reactions just were fascinating to me because different people do react differently to death and to illness and to tragedy. And it was fascinating.
Agree. Evan.
Disagree.
Oh.
I'm not going to say I'm not surprised.
Yeah, same.
But I'm not surprised.
I think you guys have. I think Megan, you've started to develop a radar for what will or will not be an Evan movie. Honestly, I was on board for most of this movie. I liked that it was very creepy. I liked that the premise was relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
I love the creepy flashing lights and how that seemed to be the sign that someone was catching whatever this I'm gonna die tomorrow-itis, I'll call it. And so I thought it was really cool. I just felt like the movie ended when it, for me, was just starting to get interesting.
But see, I would argue maybe that's a good thing.
Not for me. I was excited to see what happened next. Also, it was tomorrow and no one was actually dead yet. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, Jane was pretty damn close. She stabbed herself in the stomach. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, she was
Yeah.
hemorrhaging. Not
Yes.
hemorrhaging. She was just like bleeding all over the pool while
Bleeding all over
over.
Michelle Rodriguez.
And
Yeah.
Michelle Rodriguez, yes.
I love that Michelle Rodriguez shows up for 2 scenes
Yes.
at the end of the movie. No fanfare. And she's just this woman who's like, yeah, I'm going to die tomorrow too. You know?
Yes.
And I love that she's talking about period blood and making rivers of blood, and people assumed it was human sacrifice. It was fucking amazing. That is such an amazing scene.
While Jane Addams is bleeding to death in the swimming pool.
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
The cameo game in this movie is strong. I mean, Michelle Rodriguez. I love that Josh Lucas shows up as the doctor in this.
And he gets infected with it.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a great scene. Watching him as the doctor, watching him undergo this, and then realizing, oh shit, I have to go home and see my wife.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also Adam Wingard.
Yep. Adam Wingard. This Dune Buggy guy. That's his credit. Dune Buggy man.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting, I got to take one little quibble with the casting, and he's like a billed performer. I love me some Chris Messina. I do. But I did not buy him as Jane Addams' brother. I just was like, these two there's no way that these two have the same parents, because they could not look more different. And also, yeah, no, it's
can't help that they look different.
Well, I know, but you know how that happens. It's like, what's that movie? It's Sean Connery, Dustin Hoffman, and Matthew Broderick, where they're grandfather, father, and son. And it's like, no fucking way. No way.
Family affair or something, or family
yes, it's just like, it's not
know.
happening. And that's kind of how I felt about these two. Okay. But that being said, I still like Chris Messina's performance. I was just like, this guy's not his friend. Come on.
Yeah.
You know? To the same way he's not Paul Dano's brother in the movie where he invents Ruby Sparks. It's like, you're playing Paul Dano's brother? Really? Okay.
I mean, if that's your biggest quibble, I mean, that's not a big quibble, I would say.
That's not much of a quibble. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like you're trying to find something to quibble over, you know?
Right.
I just really, I thought this movie, I got a kick out of it. And to Evan's point, the thing that I found, I just felt dread the entire time. Just like when when Amy kept playing the same piece of classical music over and over and over, I was just like, oh my God, if she does that again, I'm going to lose my mind. And then she did it again, and like, oh, haven't lost my mind yet, but it's good. It's coming.
But like even before that, like when all you see is the close up of her eye, and that's how the film opens, and she's like clearly been crying and clearly something's wrong. And then it cuts to, Craig, her, new boyfriend or whomever. And he's like talking about like, I'm not crazy, but it's all over. But you can't quite see because he's like shielded by the wall and a door frame. And you never quite are getting, it feels like you're never quite getting the full story, even though you are. Like, yeah, it just right from the beginning, the opening scenes, there's just so much tension and dread. And I felt like I was going to vomit the entire time I was watching it. Cause I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And it was just, it was so much tension. I also love the cinematography in this so much. I love the blurring and then coming into focus. I love the lights. It felt so much like a hallucinogenic nightmare.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah. The thing that's, I don't know if it's funny. I kind of thought that nobody died, as Evan said, except for maybe Jane Addams. And
Craig, he died too.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Craig
he blew his brains out with a gun.
But he died yesterday.
Right.
No, but that was tomorrow for him because he gets it the day before.
Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering, like, are they dying metaphorically? Are they actually going to die? I would really like to know. But, because like if everybody that Amy comes into contact with is eventually going to feel like they're going to die tomorrow, that's a lot of fucking people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just based on, who she runs into in this movie alone, and even people she hasn't really, the Michelle Rodriguez and the other woman whose name escapes me, Olivia something or other, hanging out in the house that Jada Adams just walks into. It's like, okay, they've got it too. Where'd they get it from? Yeah. This is the rare movie. This is the rare, like, things left up in the air movie where I wish I had a little more information. Kind of like you, Evan.
I understand that, but I actually love that we're not given more information, because that, to me, as weird as this film is and is kind of like, is it metaphorical? Is it literal? What's happening? I kind of love that, because that's how death is. Like, it just hits and you don't know. And I mean, it is kind of interesting because they're all saying they know they're going to die, but I kind of love that there are these unknown variables happening. And I also really love that Amy Seimetz was inspired by her own anxiety and talking about her own anxiety with people. And that's where she got the idea to kind of have this idea of death spreading. I found that absolutely riveting and just fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Like I say, I dug it. I wish there had been a little more, but I dug it. I'd see it again. I would tell people, hey, see this movie. I mean, not people who are not into this movie. Like, I would not tell my mom and dad to see this movie.
I would tell your mom and dad to see it. Dave's mom and dad, see this movie.
Yeah. Well, you know what, though? My mom and dad they're stuck at home just like everybody else. And they have said to me before, it's like, we're fucking running out of shit to watch, man.
See?
So,
you know, something else I wanted to talk about with this film. Oh my God, I'm slipping over my tongue, tripping over it. I love that in when Amy tells Jane that she's like, well, I'm going to die tomorrow, so nothing matters. And she's like, and Jane's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. And she's like, I am. And she's like, and it's okay. I love that at the very final scene in the film, she's like, she's like, I'm okay. I'm okay. And it's like, she lays back as if she's ready to die. And then she pops right back up and is like, no, I'm not okay. And I kind of love that like she was so accepting of death or whatever was going to happen. And then she's like, oh, fuck, nope, I'm not okay here. And that felt really authentic and grounded to me in a film that is so strange and nothing is really tethered. I really liked that tremendously.
Yes, the conflicting emotions surrounding death.
Yes. And that was another thing too that Amy Seimetz said. She said that every story is about death. Like, you know, you name it, like everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's not entirely wrong. I can see that.
Beethoven's Fifth is about death.
But it is interesting. Like, what do you do with your final 24 hours? Like, if you did find out that you were going to die in 24 hours, what would you do with those 24 hours?
I don't know.
Who would you spend them with?
I hope I don't know that it's my final 24 hours. And this is no joke. This is what I always say about death. When your number's up,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope it's quick. That's what I always say. Because I know too many people who have died slowly, and it's fucking awful. So, you know.
But I can also see the flip side to that too, because I've heard people also say that they were glad that they had time to, you know, do things they wanted to do, say goodbye, things like that. So it is kind of a push-pull, you know, what is the right amount of time? And there's really never a right amount of time, because we're always going to run out of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
True.
Wow. What a wacky movie to end the show on.
I know. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that it's dealing with these heady, intense, you know, esoteric, existential themes. I love it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I kind of wish we had ended on Made in Italy just so we could be like, fuck this movie at the end. But, you know, all right. You know, it's fine. Whatever. It's like, we like the movie. Two of us like the movie.
Two of us. I was like, that's true. Only two of us.
Well, actually, no, Evan liked it too.
You liked a lot of the film. You liked a lot of it.
Yeah,
You know
I mean, I was on board for a lot of what was going on. For me, I feel like it didn't pay off. So that just made me mad.
See, and I get that. I really, really do. And I kept waiting for like things to just spiral and unravel and get like bonkers. But I kind of like that it didn't go that route. So I love that it subverted expectations.
Yeah.
That makes me love it more in a different way. But I do hear you.
You're a bigger person than me.
Thanks. I'll take it.
You know what I think is most interesting about this? I think that the list of what is and is not an Evan movie is a living list. It's expanding. Because I don't think, you know, when we first started doing this show, Evan, if we watched She Dies Tomorrow, you'd be like, man, I just fucking can't. I couldn't get into that shit. Fuck this. And now you're like, dude, 84 minutes? I was on board with 72 of those minutes, you know? So,
that's not too shabby. Not bad.
Yeah.
That might be an overstatement. I liked what it was going for.
I was on board with
maybe
63
minutes.
of those minutes. Alrighty. Does anybody else want to say anything about She Dies Tomorrow before we wrap this up?
Just that I loved it.
Okay, fair enough. And we've got a maybe on Evan's end. Okay, so let's recap, kids. We've got a hard no on Made in Italy from both you and me, right, Megan?
Yeah, definitely pass.
La Llorona?
I'm going to say definitely see it.
Yeah.
It's going to be on Shudder. It's going to be on Shudder on Thursday. This is going to air on Friday, but yeah, I definitely see it, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
I'm in the positive column.
Okay. I think we're all in the positive column on I Used to Go Here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think 2/3 of us are in the positive column on She Dies Tomorrow.
Yay.
Sounds right.
Yeah, good.
I mean, I wish it was all three of us, but whatever.
I know. What are you going to do? Fuck me.
What are you going to
do? Yeah. So anyway, kids, that is this week's episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. Thank you for joining us. The first thing I want to do, because I always forget to do this, is thank you to our editor, Otto Clammer. I cannot tell you what a relief it is to not have to edit the show anymore. So thank you, Otto.
Thank you, Otto.
Thank you.
As far as this podcast goes, you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. You can find it at the website, spoilerpiece.com. And when you're looking around on the social medias, check out Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. And we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. We had an email from Matt from Hyannis. So that is a good way for me to segue into kids. Please email us, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. And if you don't feel like typing, you can give us a call.
862-21-PEACE.
And leave us a voicemail. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We have a lot of food conversations in the show. Tell us about a food you want us to talk about before we get going.
Ooh,
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And if you like the show, please do us a big favor. Rate us and review us on ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. Don't, by the way, say like, they suck. If you like us, that's key. And if you really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. This week's exclusive audio is we talk about Brian Yuzna's 1989 movie Society, which was picked by one of our $10 patrons. In the $10 tier, you get to tell us what to watch. And let me tell you, folks, if I wasn't being paid to watch Society, I wouldn't watch it. So it pays dividends already. Okay, so in that spirit, we would like to thank our patrons.
Yes, we want to give a huge thank you to Bob Chipman, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Elisa. And by the way, Elisa, I owe you an email. Thank you for your lovely email. Christopher Jensen, Max Colville, Mike Lord of the Sith. Love that name. Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley M. McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you so much, patrons.
Thank you, patrons.
Thanks, patrons.
So my name is Dave Riedel. I write sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. If you want to find me on the social media, I'm Dave Sieves Movies on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd.
My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of BAFCA and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We will see you next week, and please stay safe.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.